Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Tuesday night. It is the Earthmaster out here, about 10:36 p.m. California time, December 3rd, 2024. No alien invasion. How about that? Got to be careful what you guys read out there on social media. Latest activity, a 2.6 earthquake on the Big Island of Hawaii. Well, 2.6 somewhere out there in the red flag. Also 2.2 on the Big Island, 2.6 down in South America area. We're going to start off here on the Big Island first, maybe outside the Big Island, where we've seen kind of a rare earthquake outside of the Honolulu region, out in this little, I think it's called the Kilauea Channel. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. If not, please correct me. Of course, this is the older volcanic islands, newer volcanic islands down there across the Big Island. But this earthquake coming in 3.5 earlier this afternoon. It was felt across areas of Hawaii out there, including Honolulu. Again, kind of a rare earthquake in a location that we don't really see a whole lot of movement. I did pull up the historical stats here, specifically for this region since about 2000, the year 2000. And there's been, looks like we had a three-pointer out here last year. Maybe a couple three-pointers, but it's quite rare to see, this type of activity out there. Looks like about, what do we got? 15 earthquakes of magnitude 2.5 and above in the last 24 years. So not all that common, but not completely unheard of, I guess, is the word out there. The rest of the area of the island chain does show some movement with a 2.1. And by the way, this activity here, relatively shallow, right? About 4 miles or so below the surface. This has to do with the weight of the Hawaii Islands there on top of the Pacific Plate. The Pacific Plate, of course, moving off to the northwest over the hot spot, right? So you got this hot spot spewing up magma, and of course, as the magma comes up to the surface, you get these above the oceanic surface, oceanic crust, I should say, and it builds up through the water, and then ultimately up through the top layer. It adds weight onto the Pacific Plate here, so a lot of times we'll see these earthquakes pop up here in the region that have to do with the strain and the stress there of the weight of the islands on the Pacific Plate. One earthquake there off the North Island coast at 2.1, a little strange out there as well. It looks like, there's just, we're building some islands out here. We're building out some new islands eventually off this way towards the south and southeast. We'll have a new chain of islands as these disappear slowly over time. Quite a bit of movement up here across the Kilauea volcano right now, including some movement up around the summit area. So let's go ahead and see what we got going on here. Got about 20 earthquakes here. Very shallow earthquake activity across the upper east rift zone. Let me pull up the latest data here from the Kilauea USGS volcanic site. I would love to take the opportunity to tell you what I think they're USGS, but we'll do it on another time. I don't mind doing these little surveys, but not right now. Not in the middle of an update, right? There's some of that activity out here across the upper east rift zone. Seismograph stations here. Let's see if I can pull one up. Not showing a whole lot of earthquake activity on that one. Let's see here. Maybe some of that movement was from previously earlier in the day. Yeah, not a whole lot showing up there. Up at the summit area, couple more earthquakes. It looks like most of the activity is positioned up there across the summit area. This right here looks like some magma movement, some fluid movement going on there across the summit area. Increasing earthquake activity out here. The deformation chart shows that we're going back up here in terms of inflation. There's a little dip there from yesterday, but we're going back up. Well, actually, that was earlier this morning. Now we're starting to go back up, noticing a little bit of earthquake activity as well across that region. Here is the last year of inflation. Now notice we're pretty much at a breaking point here where we've seen previous eruptions there in the past this year. Had one back in the end of July right there, and then also one back in the into September time period where we lost a lot of volume of magma with a little eruption there across the Middle East Rift Zone. Now we've gained a lot of accumulation of magma underneath the area, and we're matching those previous levels here. So what's going to take place is more than likely an increase in earthquake activity and ultimately another eruption somewhere around here. We'll have to watch and see where that's going to take place at, but I still think it's going to be towards the lower East Rift Zone down here. But again, we'll watch it and see what happens. Right now, just some elevated earthquake activity, including this one up at the summit. I mean, it's possible we could see a return of eruptions there across the crater lake, or the lava lake area at the Kilauea crater. Continue to keep an eye on that. Southern California, one earthquake here off the coast of San Diego, a little 2.6. A couple different thrust faults out here. That's the only one I see offshore. Now, as far as anything, wow, look at the movement up north here. Quite a bit there on the Calaveras fault. Let's see what we got here for the 2.5 and above map. So we got that 2.6 off the coast of San Diego, 2.5 on the west side here of the San Joaquin Valley, 2.7 the Alcatela Wells area. So some scattered activity out here today above 2.5. No swarming going on there across the Salton Sea for now. A little bit of clustering up here against the San Andreas Fault. Also some elevated movement here across this little triangle section of land that obviously shows that there's strain out there in this area. Nothing big for now, but there's a little bit of elevated movement there. One earthquake in the Los Angeles area from early this morning. Now, it looks like there was a couple earthquakes here across this area of the San Joaquin Valley. There's a couple different there's one valley fault that sits up here. I believe the Great Valley Fault does extend down south here as well. Kind of a thrust fault. But a little bit of movement stirring up there. Over the last couple months, we have seen a number of earthquakes out there. Nothing big, but I'm noticing, a trend up here tonight across the Bay Area, East Bay. It looks like through Concord up towards the Napa area. A number of earthquakes here in the one range. I mean, we had a 2.7 that is on the Calaveras Fault Zone, which is capable of producing some large earthquakes, no doubt. Let me run over and see what we got here from the, the SCSN site. I want to check out their data center here at Caltech. So that's going to be the Calaveras Fault. Well, it looks like they're not covering the Calaveras Fault there. When was the last big earthquake out there? Let's take a look. We'll go 1950. I just want to draw a little area out here across the area of the Calaveras Fault Zone, which extends roughly about there. I don't want to include a lot of... See, unfortunately, it's going to bring in a lot of movement down south here, but I think that should cover it. Oh, goodness. Hold on a second here. Extends down past here, past San Jose. That should work. We'll try and root out the other earthquakes here, but I just want to see what's been going on there across the Calaveras Fault Zone. Not a whole lot. You got the Hayward Fault. That's obviously a fault system that's capable of producing a large earthquake, and it's been, I think that's the highest probability across the Bay Area in terms of percentage-wise with a large earthquake here in the future. Some movement on the Calaveras Fault here. Back in 1984, a 6.2 struck. A couple other 5s in there as well, with the last one, a 5.1 back in 2022. Some other faults here across the Greenville Fault, but a little skimpy there on the Calaveras Fault. One earthquake way up north here, that 6-pointer back in 2014. Not really associated with the Calaveras Fault. I think that was on the West Napa Fault, but Good. I mean, there's both of these fault systems here are, I think, possibly in the high percentage of seeing something pop soon. But we are getting quite a bit of elevated movement out here, it looks like, in the last 24 hours along that fault system. One here on the Hayward Fault as well, a little 1.0. So we'll continue to watch that. Of course, with increasing activity out here across the plate boundary, that's going to show some elevated activity. So we'll keep an eye on it for sure. Reno area, a couple smaller quakes out there. One earthquake up in the, this is just outside the dam area of Lake Almanor, little 1.9. There's a fault system here that runs underneath the lake. It looks like this is just at the southern end of that fault system. Not shown up here on the USGS map, but there is a newly discovered fault. Across the Pacific Northwest, Mount St. Helens here. A couple earthquakes from this morning. We checked that out. There's really not a whole lot. There's just some very small spiky earthquake there showing up on the charts. I'll show you guys real quick here. Volcanic seismicity, Mount St. Helens. A couple earthquakes out there, right? But nothing of any elevated activity. There's some of that movement showing up here in the last few hours as well. Right there, right there, right here. Yeah, there's a number of them, right? But nothing big. Definitely nothing big going on. And we've seen elevated, or we've seen a little bit of swarming here last year in the Mount St. Helens region. But we're just getting a little bit of seismic activity here in the last couple days. Very small earthquake activity. Nothing going on there across the Cascadia, but I do want to double check, which shows, got a pretty decent number here, 201 epicenters of tremor there across the southern end, extreme southern end of the Cascadia. Nothing going on here as far as any earthquake activity, though. Yellowstone National Park, nothing. Let's verify that, make sure. And it looks like that is correct. Not a whole lot going on there across Yellowstone National Park for now, as far as the seismograph stations there are concerned. Texas rocking and rolling out here. A little bit of elevated movement. 3.8 coming in earlier this evening. Originally a 4-pointer out there outside of Pecos, Texas. A little separate swarm out there and some oil fields. Some pumping operations going on here. If you zoom in the desert out here, there's a little pond. There's actually quite a few wastewater ponds out here and a whole bunch of oil tanks. So the oil fields out here are getting hit pretty hard here in the last 24 hours outside of Pecos. Looks like Big Spring area, Odessa as well. A little migration of pressure. So we'll watch for that further escalation of earthquake activity through Texas, maybe Oklahoma, and then maybe eventually leading up to the New Madrid seismic zone in that fashion. Nothing major going on here across the east. There's that little earthquake from late last night out around the Charleston area with a little 1.6. Puerto Rico Trench down here, a couple smaller earthquakes. A 4-pointer out here earlier this morning, 4.7 to be exact, just after 1 o'clock on Tuesday morning, early this morning. But not a whole lot of activity since then. Continue to keep an eye on that. That's some elevated movement going on. See what we got here for the earthquake 3D globe. New Zealand down here, getting a trail of 3s across the plate boundary. Nothing big going on for now. Mixed bag of, well, actually some deeper activity from yesterday and today across the Tonga Trench. Here across Taiwan, a 5.1 stirring up here. Actually, if you notice, got some interesting activity taking place here around the Java Trench, all around, pretty much encircling the Java Trench area recently. And there's movement here across Taiwan. One of the later quakes, 5.1, 5.7 there in the Philippines earlier this morning. This is kind of, again, a little odd quake over here across India, but it's got to do with the strain out here in this region of the Java Trench. That's why I'm a little concerned here. That's possibly where we could see our next 8-pointer. That's been building up some steam here recently. The USGS is not going to show it a lot here, but we've seen a lot of 3s and 4s out here. This is just what the USGS is showing here across the Sumatra area. A lot of 4s and 5s, but there's been a handful more smaller earthquakes here in that mix. So things may be starting to look like we may see some larger activity out here soon with all the recent surrounding activity there of the Java Trench. Again, that 5.1 in India. Let's see what we got here for historical data. Far as 4.5 and above goes, it's quite rare, actually. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity out here across this area of India. One down south here, it looks like at some distance, but as you can see, you know, it's not along a major plate boundary. Major plate boundary is going to be here across the Java Trench. So a little bit of interesting activity there across the India area. Continue to keep an eye on that overall pattern that's encircling the Java Trench region down here across the Australia area as well, seeing some movement. So keep an eye here. Java Trench looks a little fishy here in terms of larger scale potential. Mediterranean area, some 2s and 3s, even a 4-pointer out there across Turkey. One earthquake down in South Africa, it looks like, 4.2. Nothing going on, far as we know, across the Antarctica area. Japan region, mixed bag of earthquake activity, it looks like. Some 4s out there. Middle America Trench showing some elevated activity. That's probably going to keep the strain here across Puerto Rico on the elevated side. Quite a bit of movement here across the Middle America Trench. South America, some decent movement down there as well. So I would definitely say it's somewhat elevated out here today, right? So we'll see what happens overnight. I think we'll keep an eye there on the Java Trench. As far as flaring goes, any major solar flares going on? Doesn't look like it. Things are pretty quiet, at least as far as the Earth-facing side of the sun goes. We do have a bright feature out on the eastern limb from an active area. We'll get a better look at that here in the coming days. Flaring activity right now, mostly sea flare activity, but again, we'll see what happens there once that far side sunspot gets into a better Earth-directed view. I sure miss the magnetogram image in terms of the color here. I don't know when we're going to see this come back into the public viewing, but it's been offline here for quite a few days due to some flooding down there across the Solar Dynamics Observatory at Stanford University. Kind of odd. No major flare. No major flaring. Possibilities extend up to a 5% chance for X flare, M flare at 30, C flare around 99% chance. No major auroras there in the forecast for now. And as you can see there, not a whole lot happening across the area for the auroras. No major severe weather in the forecast for now. Let's take a gander look here at the forecasted models from the Tropical Tidbits page. So we put this into motion here. A whole bunch more snow coming into the Great Lakes area in the Northeast. So hopefully you guys aren't tired of the snow shoveling. There's a bunch more coming, it looks like, here as we head towards the end of the week. After that, we venture into more of a south to north pattern out here, bringing in some warmer Gulf moisture across the area. A lot of rain coming into the drought-stricken areas there across this region, so I think they'll appreciate that. And let's put this into motion here. I'm hoping, oh man, gosh darn it, it's strange. It's a really weird pattern out here across California right now. There's just not a whole lot happening. And December is one of our more stormier, wetter months out here, and I don't see anything sufficient building up out here. Just overall a very awkward, weird winter so far. So we'll see what happens, hopefully. I mean, we're still somewhat early. November, we still have potentially January, February, and early March for a wet season out here across California. Let's hope that things turn to a wetter pattern for California. Seismographs, all the live seismograph stations there look pretty quiet, folks. Not a whole lot going on currently, but we'll keep an eye on things, see what happens overnight. We'll be back here early in the morning for the Wednesday morning update. Keep an eye here across the Java Trench. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of activity stirring up across this region. It's a major subduction zone, and it's got some potential out there, that's for sure. Will it be our next 8-pointer area? Who knows? I mean, it's coming. 8-pointers coming out here somewhere. The question is, where at on the map? Take your pick. All right, have a good one, folks. We'll see you guys back out here tomorrow morning. Stay safe out there.